In the world of alpha countries, two nations reign supreme. The United States of America is the largest and strongest economy globally, and coming in hot at second place is the up-and-coming economic powerhouse, China. In this video, we will explain the ongoing trade war in less than 10 minutes between the two giants and how China's economic rise poses a threat to the most powerful nation in the world, America. Make sure to stick around to the end of the video because there's a lot of useful information here. These two bulls have been butting heads in the last few decades, and while the USA has a comfortable lead on military might, China is quickly catching up. One aspect that China poses as a real threat to the supremacy of the USA is the rising economic power. China's economy has been growing at an unbelievable rate since the late 1970s under the Chinese economic reform led by their president at the time, Deng Xiaoping, who opened China's economy to the world in 1978. In 2001, China joined the World Trade Organization, which further helped propel the country into an economic superpower status. Because of this, China became the world's largest manufacturing economy and exporter of goods. Their exports can be found in all 7 continents of the world. That explains why almost everything you buy, no matter what the industry is, including your beloved Apple iPhone, Nike sneakers, and the very food you eat, have the infamous label that have become a household name of Made in China. To show further insight on China's incredible economic rise, let's talk about China's GDP. GDP is China's gross domestic product, which is the value of all merchandises and goods produced within the country in a certain time frame. In 1978, China's GDP at market value was just 6% compared to America's, according to The Economist. As of 2019, it has rocketed to 66%. Their GDP has dramatically grown 11 times higher in a span of just 4 decades. China has already overtaken America in the local spending power in 2014, according to Wikipedia. Forecasts made by the British Consultancy Centre for the Economics and Business Research, also known as CEBR, it predicts that China will overtake the number 1 ranked U.S. economy by the year 2030, which is less than a decade from now. The China-United States trade war is an ongoing economic conflict between the two countries that signified the already growing trading tensions between the two powerhouses. The trade war also in some ways is an acknowledgement that America is truly recognizing China as a real threat to the economic world dominance. In January of 2018, the United States president at the time, Donald Trump, began imposing tariffs on imports from China. A tariff is essentially a tax on imported goods. Trump encouraged imposing tariffs on imported goods to promote domestic manufacturing and also more made in America products as far back as the 1980s, even before becoming president. This was a major issue he addressed and sought to make changes during his presidential campaign. The Trump administration's goal of imposing tariffs was to attempt to get China to change their ways on what the US says was unfair trade practices and theft of intellectual property.
But we have a trade deficit, depending on the way you calculate, of $504 billion. Now, some people would say it's really $375 billion. Many different ways of looking at it, but any way you look at it, it is the largest deficit of any country in the history of our world. It's out of control. We have a tremendous intellectual property theft situation going on.
It was also a way to possibly make improvements to the US-China trade deficit. The trade deficit can be defined that America is importing way more goods from China than it does exporting American goods into China. In other words, America is buying goods from China way more than China is buying goods from America. To illustrate this in numbers, imports from China coming into America is about $434.7 billion as compared to U.S. exports going into China was only at $124.5 billion in 2020, making this a $310.3 billion trade deficit according to the Office of the United States Trade Representative. 2018 was a year of back and forth tariffs being put on goods between the two countries as the trade war escalates, as you can see according to this Wikipedia page. In July of 2018, the US imposed tariffs of 25% on $50 billion of Chinese goods, practically doubling the tariff rate of Chinese imports from 3.8 to 6.7%. China then declared that US had declared a trade war and retaliates by imposing a 25% tariffs on $16 billion of American-made goods imported into China. Now, while some wars end up costing lives, this trade war ends up costing consumers more money and some to lose their jobs and ultimately their businesses. The tariffs imposed on Chinese imports ultimately resulted in American firms having to pay to receive these imports, which in turn, the expenses pass down to the average American consumer who will have to pay higher markup in retail prices for these companies to turn a profit. For instance, the 25% tariff placed on Chinese furniture imports alone will cost consumers an additional $4 billion a year based on a study done by the National Retail Federation of the United States. China has also imposed high tariffs on imported American-made soybeans coming from farmers in the Midwest who rely heavily on selling soybeans to China. China is the largest purchaser of American-made soybeans, while the US is one of the largest producers of soybeans globally. Due to the trade war and the high tariffs on American soybean exports, many American soybean farmers could no longer financially operate, costing a loss of jobs and businesses.
Soybeans, one of the products caught in the crosshairs of the growing trade war between the world's two largest economies.
It's getting really tough. Something needs to get done.
It was about a 40-cent drop overnight trading. And I mean, us as farmers need every penny we can. A penny doesn't sound like a lot to most people, but when you sell it 100,000 bushels a year, every penny makes a big difference.
On the flip side, in China, the impact of the trade war affected certain companies, which had to lay off employees due to the trade war, which slowed down the economy. In conclusion, the tariff hurt both countries' economies, and because of the trade war, it caused the economic growth to slow down worldwide as a result of the trade conflict between the two competing superpowers. Both sides reached the Phase 1 trade deal agreement in January of 2020, which expired in December of 2021. China fell short of purchasing American-made goods as promised by a wide margin. Through the end of Trump's presidency, the trade war is seen as a failure. So going back to China's emergence as a global economic powerhouse, what will possibly happen if China did take over America's spot as the #1 economy in the world? You can say the trade war was a strategy deployed to possibly curb China's rise and for the US to maintain their dominance. There's no definitive answers for these questions, as no one has a crystal ball. One thing's for sure is that the country that has the leading economy will have the most money to spend. And the country that has the most money will have the ability to influence things on a global level. If China replaces America as the largest economy in the world, they will be able to heavily influence global affairs and make friends and allies easily. More money also means an even larger and even more advanced powerful military presence to protect its interests. Only time will tell. It took me 4 cups of coffee and an entire day just to research this topic and write a script about it without the editing. If you want to support us and if you appreciate our hard work and dedication, the quickest way you can do is by sharing this video, clicking like and subscribing. If you feel like we deserve it and you want to support us further, consider joining our Patreon page or donating any amount you feel by clicking the thanks button. Until then, feel free to leave your opinions below in the comment box section below. Stay informed and Genius Tomato out.